the thumbnail hasn't given it away, today I'm installing a Process West Verticooler on a G3 WRX. For those of you who don't know, I'm working towards a modest power upgrade that will turn this into a nice treatable daily on a budget. So more videos to come, including how to install a fuel pump, an air intake, and a few other things, including getting a tune. So make sure you subscribe now if you want to check those videos out in the future. But on to the task at hand, how to put a Process West Verticooler on a WRX. Every step shown, every tool shown, every mistake shown. Let's get on with it. So this is a Process West Verticooler kit for a G3 WRX. As you can see, it comes with a few bits, including the intercooler, the air ducting, the pipe work, hardware kit. Now, if you bought the kit used like I have, just make sure you've got everything before you get started, for obvious reasons. The best way to do that is head to the Process West website and use the sales email that they've listed on there to contact the guys and ask for the install instructions via PDF. They will give it to you, I know because I asked and I've got it. On that install sheet, you will find a list of everything that should be in the kit. So run that against what you've got in front of you to make sure that you've got everything before you get started. I'm missing a few bolts here and there, but that's nothing I couldn't solve at a hardware store. But if you need anything more crucial than that, they will sell you an elbow, they will sell you the intercooler separately or the air ducting separately. Whatever you need, the guys will help you out. They're really good. They don't just support the new customers, they support their used products as well. So just a little word of warning there, make sure you've got everything before you get started. Obviously, if you bought the kit new, you don't have to worry about this, but if you bought it used, yeah, just do some homework there. The only other thing you're going to need to put this on are some tools, and here's the list.
Alrighty, so have a work light ready as you'll be working underneath the bonnet, have a pick ready, a handled socket extension like this, have a pry bar, a ratchet and some extensions, including this flexible joint if you can get it. It will really help with some of the screws. Have a 7, an 8, a 10, a 12, a 13 and a 14 millimeter socket. Have a 10, a 13 and a 14 millimeter spanner. Have some screwdrivers ready. Have a trim remover tool, some lubricant, a pair of scissors, and finally, but very importantly, some cut-proof work gloves that will protect your hands. I sell these by the way, so check out the link below.
Let's get started. So the first thing is I'm going to take all of this off. So I'm going to start with the insulation, and that's being held on by just a bunch of plastic clips. So get yourself a clip remover tool and pop all of these out. So just slide this backwards and it'll come right off. Next, we're going to take off this ducting work underneath the hood here as well. So that will be held on by a bunch of plastic clips and a couple of bolts as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plastic clips. I like to leave one in there because next we'll undo the bolts on either side, and I don't want this falling forward. So 6 total, 3 on each side, and they're an 8 millimeter. Okay, at this point, this thing is ready to come out. So all you gotta do is drop it down and pull forward, and the whole thing comes off. We've just got a few more things to take off this hood scoop here, and that is mostly this plastic ducting over here. So we've got a whole bunch of plastic clips to undo again. So on the top here, you'll have a bunch of rubber nibs. So these are tricky little buggers. They kind of just push through these holes here, but try not to tear them because this is a factory part. If you ever return the car back to stock, you're going to want these to definitely work. Otherwise, your ducting, if you put this ever back on, won't function properly. Just take your time and take these off carefully, which is easier said than done. So you see these little nibs, yeah, try not to break these. This is what I'm talking about. Broke one. Okay, so I managed to get it off with only breaking one. Let's see if you can beat my record. This is what you'll be left with. So at this point, take your air duct and it goes in here. So you will find 4 mounting holes through here. You're going to need the 4 rounded head nuts that are M6 from the kit. If not, get yourself some M6 nuts from a hardware store. And on the other side, you're going to screw them on with captive nuts, M6. There will be another 2 that need to go in here. Now for me, those were missing in the kit, so I got a couple of M6 nuts to put through there. And just put the nuts on the other side. Once these 2 and the other 4 are in, just tighten them up. So the M6 nuts on the inside usually take a 10mm spanner. So just hold them in place and tighten these up. They don't need to be super tight. Obviously, it's not structural or anything. It's just channeling air. Beautiful. So once you've done that, just set this aside. We don't need it for the moment. The instructions say to put it on the car now, but honestly, you've got more room to work with without this being on top of your head. So we'll put that on last. We'll take the intercooler off next. Okay, so to take the factory intercooler off, we'll have to undo a few bolts and remove a few brackets, etc. But before we get started on that, if you're driving a left-hand drive vehicle, this brake master cylinder is going to be over there for you, and it's going to get in your way. So Process West has included a couple of extra steps you need to do. I obviously don't need to do this because I've got plenty of room here, but when this is over there, the room's a bit tight. So what they've said is, for you, if your car is left-hand drive, this plug over here will be on this side for you, and you have to transfer it to this side, much like it is on mine at the moment. So to do that, you'll have to bear in mind this is on this side for you. So you'll need to undo this plug and pull out this white clip with a pair of pliers. Pull really hard, and then once that white clip comes out, transfer it over to this side and plug the harness back in, and then basically that which is over there for you will be good to go. That wire will be out of the way and you'll have enough room to put in the Verticooler. I'll put up a couple of screenshots now out of the Process West install guide so that you can see what I'm talking about. So now that that's done, let's get this thing off. So let's start on this side. Firstly, undo this hose, and we've got 2 bolts here going to the turbo, so we'll undo those. Okay, and now on the other side here, we'll take off this rear bolt. We'll also undo the hose here and here, and you can't quite see it from there, but in here there is also a silicone hose that has a worm drive clamp on it, so we're going to undo that as well. Take this vacuum hose off too. So I know it's hard to see, but you see that worm drive clamp here? That's what you're undoing. It goes to the throttle body into the intercooler. So we're undoing that. So once those bolts are undone, make sure this hose is off, and you should be able to wriggle this off, wriggle this away. And there she goes. Now, don't throw this anywhere because we're going to need to transfer this onto the new one. Back at the car, just check everything over now that you can look down into the back of your engine and onto the gearbox. Make sure there are no leaks. Dog mounts in good order, and everything's looking fairly good here. This bolt here for the turbo's a bit how's it going, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, just make sure everything's cool here. And the next thing we have to do is take off this bracket here. And to do that, you need it's a 12mm, 2 bolts. There's going to be a clip attached to this bracket that holds your harness in place. So just unclip it. There we go. Now take this bracket that came with your kit. So see these 2 bolt holes? They go there. So take your 2 original factory bolts and feed them through. And just put them in, but don't tighten them down just yet. Have it loose like that. Make sure that your wiring harness is plugged into it. Next, you're going to take your elbow that came in the kit and the rubber O-ring and position it in place like so. Position it on top of your turbo and put your bolts back in. Once that elbow is on, just tighten it down. It doesn't need to be super tight. You're just crushing a rubber O-ring, and you're going into alloys, so yeah, be very careful. You don't want to cross thread this or do any damage. Okay, that's on nice and tight, and we've got the bracket on loose on the other side over there. Next, you're going to attach these brackets to your intercooler. Now, one thing to note is one of them has a nut welded onto the bracket, so that nut, when you install these brackets, needs to face the piping that turns inwards. See how this one goes outwards? So that one goes there, and this bracket with a nut faces this elbow that faces inwards. So that's how you put them on. Also, these M8 nuts, I only have 2 of them that came with this, again because I bought this used. So these are a good replacement. These are M8 16mm nuts, high tensile, from a hardware store. Here are the details if you want a set as well. And these work quite well. The only thing I would say is pack these with a washer, just to make sure that they don't accidentally bottom out into your intercooler and puncture a hole in them. So just use a little washer like that, and then I'll use the standard supplied M8s on the inside, and I'll put another hardware store one on the outside over here. Okay, so that is your brackets on. Again, this nut faces the elbow pointing inwards. Now, remember your factory intercooler? We're going to have to remove this blow-off valve. So take a 10mm and undo the 2 bolts. 1, 2. Take the gasket with you. Use the factory supplied 10mm. Again, don't overdo it. You're only crushing a rubber gasket here, so yeah, just make it nice and snug. Next, we're going to take off the throttle body hose. That's this big one over here. This side is already disconnected, so you can take off this worm drive clamp. We're going to have to disconnect it over here as well. Now, as you can see, space is pretty limited in here, but one thing that might help you reach this worm drive clamp is, see this hose? It's underneath this hose. So if we undo this 10mm bolt over here and take this bolt out, now we've got some room. I can take a flathead and reach underneath here. Can you see that? And undo this worm drive clamp. So then you take this silicone hose that came in your kit with a narrow and a wider end on it. This side goes on the throttle body. Put your clamps on. There we go. Now we're going to install this onto the throttle body. So I'm just going to lubricate this a little bit. Alright, let's take this over to the car. So install this the same way, facing towards the outside. So with that hose now on secure, we can reattach this bolt over here. Alrighty, so we've got one hose, two hoses ready to go, and a third one here too. And we've also got the turbo outlet over here ready to go. Next, looking at the front of the car, moving backwards, just past your manifold here, you will find your dog bone, just there. Underneath your dog bone, you will find a bolt. There's a nut on this end, and there's the bolt on this end over here. We're going to remove that. So this bolt is a 14 millimeter. On this end, it's a 15 millimeter nut. So you might have to hold on to it while you crank it off. If you can get yourself a pry bar, it will really help. There we go, so that's out. Now hold on to this because you're going to need it in a minute. So remember this bracket on your intercooler? Well, this bolt goes through here into this welded on nut. So we're ready to put this intercooler into the car. We're basically going to slide it on, and what you're going to do is, as you put the intercooler in, you're going to put this elbow onto the throttle body outlet hose. So just keep that in mind. So just a little bit of silicone spray. So this is the hose down here in question. We'll just move these out of the way for now. Have your hose clamp ready to go. And essentially you'll be putting it in, sliding it onto this hose, and putting the two brackets in here. So this hose is on, as you can see. The bracket is ready to be attached, and the two brackets are on either side of that bolt mount. So now we can put this bolt back in. So now that nut is in, don't fully tighten it, just leave it a little bit loose, and then you'll come up here and you'll reinsert the factory nut that originally came on the factory intercooler. And the kit should come with an M8 nut. Now mine was missing, so I went to the hardware store and I got an M8 nut and a washer, and that's gonna do for me today. And just tighten that down. So with that one tight, we can tighten the bracket nuts over here. So with these two and that one tightened, we can come back here and tighten up the bracket nut. Okay, so that's tight now as well. Now, here's a tip. Get yourself a long extension with the socket on the end. And what you can do is reach through past the turbo here, underneath this bracket, and you've got all this room to play with, as long as you got this swivel head on the end. Yeah, so that will stop you fighting all those brackets underneath there. One of these is really good, one of these swivel heads. Okay, so next we're just going to start plumbing some of these hoses back in. First and foremost, don't forget that you've got a throttle body hose going into your intercooler. So grab your clamp and bring it up here nice and tight. Get that tightened up. There we go, nice and tight. Now, remember your little vacuum line that went to your blow-off valve? Well, it doesn't quite fit anymore, does it? But that's all right, we can fix that. We're just gonna have to reroute it a little bit. So over here, undo the clamp, and there's another clamp over here that goes over your electric wiring harness. So undo that as well. Route it underneath, and underneath the bracket as well, just like so. There we go. So now you'll probably find that it fits again. Don't forget your clamp and slide your hose on. tighten that up. Okay, so with your blow-off valve vacuum line rerouted and tightened down, next find this little hose over here in your kit, attach a worm drive clamp to either end. So you're going to want the bendy bit to go on the outside and the straight bit to go on your blow-off valve. So once this hose is connected and tied down on both ends, you're going to take this hose and connect it here. Now you're going to have to get quite brutal with it. Make sure that it's on. Take your clamp, put it on. Okay, with that hose attached and that hose attached, here is your last hose. So you're attaching hose clamps to both ends, and this goes on here just like that. So there it is. That's kind of it. Now just go through and check all your hose connections, make sure that they're nice and tight, because if anything's loose, you're gonna have a vacuum leak. So check all your hose clamps. Don't forget the one down here. Alrighty, and when you're happy with that, it's time to reinstall the scoop.
So with the scoop, just slide in the prongs down the bottom there, and then you can install your plastic clips and bolts. So with all the clips in and looking good, it's time to put the heat shield back on. Now before you do, the Process West instruction manual tells you to cut this bottom section out because you've got to clear the new Verticooler. So go ahead and on both sides make a little right angle cut like this and cut this section out. And now it's time to put the heat shield back on the car. So simply reinstall all your clips and you're done.
There it is, my dudes. That's how you install a Process West Verticooler on a G3 WRX. I hope you like this video and hit that like button, hit subscribe if you want to see future videos coming up on this G3 WRX, where I put on a few other performance mods to get this thing ready for a tune. Essentially, yeah, you're gonna need 2 or 3 hours to get this done. I mean, she's breathing better, you know, she's probably gonna run a lot cooler in the summer and all of that, but until you go get a tune, yeah, there's not that much difference. Honestly, this isn't gonna give you an instant power hike. This is so that your potential, once you get the car tuned, is a lot better. But in any case, that was the DIY step-by-step video on how to put a Process West Verticooler on your WRX. I hope you liked the video. If you want to put a Verticooler on your car, go ahead and try this at home. I'll see you next time.